The Galactic Military Academy floated in the darkness of space like a small moon. It was the finest military school in the entire Allied Confederation. Students came from every corner of the galaxy to train here. They came from dozens of different species, each one hoping to become a great warrior. The Valari were tall and strong. Their blue skin was thick like armor, and their forearms made them deadly in close combat. The Northi were thin and pale, but their minds could reach into the thoughts of others. The Krexi were small and fast, their insect-like bodies moving quicker than the eye could follow. And then there were the humans. Humans were considered average at best. They were not particularly strong. They were not psychic. They were not fast. Most instructors saw them as support units. Good for paperwork. Good for logistics. Not good for real fighting. Yuna was a human. She was 22 years old, with black hair that she kept tied back in a simple ponytail. Her face was plain and forgettable. She never smiled. She never frowned. She simply existed, like a shadow in the corner of a room. In her combat class of 50 students, Yuna ranked 47th. Her shooting scores were acceptable, but nothing special. Her tactical tests showed basic understanding but no brilliance. When instructors called on her in class, she gave short answers that were technically correct, but never impressive. She was, by every measure, completely ordinary. Instructor Vorath was a Valari general with 17 campaign ribbons on his chest. He had fought in wars that lasted decades. He had killed enemies by the thousands. When he looked at Yuna during training exercises, he felt nothing but disappointment. Humans lack the physical ability for direct combat, he told his fellow instructors during a staff meeting. This one especially. She moves like she is half asleep. I will recommend her for a logistics duty when she graduates. If she graduates. The other instructors nodded in agreement. They had all noticed the quiet human girl who seemed to put minimal effort into everything she did. Taiwu was one of the few other human cadets at the academy. He was friendly and outgoing, always trying to build connections with his classmates. When he noticed Yuna sitting alone in the cafeteria day after day, he felt sorry for her. "Hey," he said one day, sitting down across from her with his food tray. "I'm Taiwu. We're in the same tactical theory class." Yuna looked up at him. Her eyes were dark and calm, like deep water. "I know who you are. Great. So I was thinking we humans should stick together, you know? There aren't many of us here, and the other species can be kind of..." He searched for the right word. "I prefer to be alone," Yuna said quietly. She picked up her tray and left. Taiwu watched her go, confused and a little hurt. He had only wanted to be friendly. Jisoo was another human cadet, but she was nothing like Yuna. Jisoo had worked incredibly hard to reach the top 20 in their class. She trained extra hours. She studied until late at night. She pushed herself beyond her limits every single day. When Jisoo looked at Yuna, she felt anger. "She makes us all look bad," Jisoo complained to Taiwu one evening. "The other species already think humans are weak. And then there's her, barely trying, confirming everything they believe about us." "Maybe she's going through something," Taiwu suggested. "She seems sad." "We're all going through something," Jisoo replied. "That's no excuse." There was one instructor who saw things differently. Instructor Melis was a Northi, ancient and withered. She had taught at the academy for over 60 years. Her specialty was battlefield meditation, teaching students how to calm their minds during combat. Part of her teaching involved reading the surface thoughts of her students to assess their mental states. One day, during a routine class exercise, Melis reached out with her mind toward Yuna. She expected to find the usual things she found in young cadets. Anxiety about grades, worry about the future, fear of failure, ambition to succeed. Instead, she found nothing. No, That was not quite right. She found something, but it was like looking at a perfectly still lake. The surface was calm and flat. No ripples. No waves. Just endless, peaceful stillness. Maylis pushed a little deeper, trying to sense what lay beneath that calm surface. The moment she did, something pushed back. It was gentle, but firm, like a door closing softly in her face. Maylis pulled back immediately, surprised. In 60 years of teaching, she had never encountered a student who could block a Narathi mind touch so easily and so quietly. Most people who resisted did so with force and panic. This was different. This was controlled. This was trained. Maylis studied Yuna for the rest of the class. The human girl sat in the back row, her posture relaxed, her face blank. She looked like any other mediocre student. But she was not. Curious, Maylis murmured to herself after class. Either she is completely empty inside, or she is completely full. Either there is nothing there, or there is so much that she has learned to hide it all. Maylis considered reporting her observation to the academy administration. But what would she say? That a failing student had a calm mind? That was not a crime. That was not even unusual. She decided to say nothing. She would watch and wait. The semester continued. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Yuna maintained her position near the bottom of her class. She never improved. She never got worse. She attended every class, completed every assignment, and participated in every training exercise with exactly enough effort to pass and nothing more. Her classmates stopped noticing her. Her instructors stopped remembering her name. She became invisible, just another forgettable face in a sea of cadets. This was exactly what she wanted. At night, when her roommate was asleep, Yuna would sometimes stand by the window of her quarters and look out at the stars. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. She looked tired. She looked empty. But sometimes, in the darkness of her eyes, something flickered. Something that looked like fire. Something that looked like pain. Then it would disappear, and she would return to her bed, and she would sleep without dreams. She had learned long ago how to stop dreaming. Dreams were dangerous. Dreams reminded her of things she needed to forget. Dreams reminded her of faces she would never see again. Dreams reminded her of who she really was, and who she really was needed to stay buried. At least, that was the plan. But plans, as Yuna knew better than anyone, rarely survived contact with reality. And reality was about to come knocking. The alarm woke everyone at 3 in the morning. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Sirens screamed through the speakers. Cadets stumbled out of their beds, confused and frightened, pulling on their uniforms with shaking hands. Yuna was already dressed when her roommate woke up. She stood by the door, waiting, her face showing no emotion at all. "What's happening?" her roommate asked, a young Krexi named Vrix. "Emergency assembly," Yuna replied. "We should go." The main hall was chaos. Hundreds of cadets from every species pushed and shoved, trying to find their assigned positions. Instructors shouted orders that nobody could hear over the noise. Admiral Kang stood on the raised platform at the front of the hall. He was human, one of the very few humans to ever reach such a high rank in the Confederate military. His hair was gray, his face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and hard. He raised his hand, and slowly, the hall fell silent. 3 hours ago, Admiral Kang said, his voice carrying across the room. The Vuxary hegemony launched a surprise attack on mining colony 7 Kappa. A murmur of fear rippled through the crowd. The Vuxary were the enemy of the Allied Confederation. They had been fighting a Cold War for decades, with occasional border skirmishes and raids. But a direct attack on a colony was something much more serious. The colony's defense force has been destroyed, the admiral continued. Civilian evacuation is currently underway, but enemy forces are closing in. The nearest Confederate fleet is 12 hours away. He paused, letting that sink in. We are 4 hours away. The murmuring grew louder. Cadets looked at each other with wide eyes. They were students, not soldiers. They were not ready for real combat. I know what you are thinking, Admiral Kang said. You are not ready. You are too young. You are not trained enough. His jaw tightened. There are 15,000 civilians on that colony. Men, women, children. If we do not help them, they will die. Silence. I am asking for volunteers. Senior cadets only. You will provide covering fire for evacuation transports. You will not engage the enemy directly. Your only job is to protect the civilians until they reach safe distance. Hands went up across the hall. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Yuna did not raise her hand. She did not have to. When the squad assignments were announced an hour later, her name was on the list for Transport Guard Unit 7. The flight to Mining Colony 7 Kappa took exactly 4 hours and 12 minutes. Yuna spent most of that time in the cargo bay of the transport ship, checking her equipment and staying away from her squad mates. There were 4 of them in total. Their squad leader was a Valari named Korvax. He was big and confident, always talking about his family's military history. The other 2 were a Northy named Cerise and another human named Dongwu. Dongwu tried to make conversation with Yuna during the flight. Scary, isn't it? He said, sitting down next to her. Real combat, I mean. I've been training for 2 years, but this is different. Yuna looked at him. He was young, probably only 19. His hands were shaking slightly, though he was trying to hide it. You'll be fine, she said. Stay close to the squad leader. Follow orders. Don't try to be a hero. Dongwu nodded, grateful for the advice. Have you ever been in real combat before? Yuna's eyes went distant for a moment. Then she blinked and shook her head. No, never. It was a lie, but she said it so smoothly that Dongwu believed her completely. They arrived at the colony to find chaos. The planet's surface was burning. Vexery ground forces had already overrun the main settlement. Evacuation transports were launching from emergency pads, packed with terrified civilians. Confederate defense satellites had been destroyed, leaving the space above the colony wide open. Transport Guard Unit 7 took up position around a cluster of 3 evacuation ships. Their job was simple: escort the transports to safe distance, then return for the next group. For the first hour, everything went according to plan. The Vexery forces seemed focused on the ground assault. A few enemy fighters made passes at the evacuation corridor, but they were easily driven off. Korvax commanded the squad with growing confidence, his earlier nervousness fading. This isn't so bad, he said over the radio. Maybe the Vexery are too busy looting the colony to worry about us. Yuna said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on her scanner, watching the empty space around them. Something felt wrong. She had learned to trust her instincts long ago. They had saved her life more times than she could count. And right now, her instincts were screaming at her. Squad leader, she said quietly. Request permission to perform a deep scan of Sector 7. Korvax laughed. Sector 7 is empty. I already checked. Please, Yuna pressed. Something doesn't feel right. Before Korvax could respond, space tore open. A Vexery carrier group dropped out of hyperspace directly on top of them. 1 carrier. 12 fighters. They appeared less than 2 kilometers away, their weapons already charging. Korvax froze Dot in combat training. He had always known what to do. The exercises had clear rules, clear objectives, clear solutions. But this was not training. This was real. And suddenly, his mind went completely blank. Squad leader, Cerise shouted. "Orders." Korvax said nothing. His hands were frozen on the controls. The Vexery fighters opened fire. Dongwu's ship exploded first. He didn't even have time to scream. One moment he was there, the next he was just debris floating in space. Cerise tried to run. She pushed her engines to maximum, trying to escape the kill zone. A Vexery fighter cut her off and shredded her ship with plasma fire. Korvax finally snapped out of his shock. He tried to fight back, firing wildly at the approaching enemies. But he was panicking, his shots going wide, hitting nothing. 3 Vexery fighters surrounded him. Their weapons glowed blue. Korvax's last words were a scream for his mother. Then he was gone. Yuna was alone. Her ship had taken damage in the initial attack. Her left engine was dead. Her shields were failing. Warning lights covered her console, painting her face in red. 12 enemy fighters circled around her like sharks smelling blood. Behind them, the massive Vexery carrier waited, its hangar doors open, ready to launch even more ships. The evacuation transports were still in range. Still vulnerable. If she ran, if she tried to escape, the Vexery would chase her down. And then they would turn on the civilian ships. 15,000 people. Men, women, children. Yuna closed her eyes. For a moment, she was somewhere else. She was in a dark room, surrounded by 11 faces. Her family. Her team. The people she had loved more than anything in the universe. They were all dead now. Killed by the Vexery 8 months ago. She had tried so hard to forget. She had tried so hard to be nobody. She had buried herself in mediocrity, hoping that the pain would eventually fade. But some things cannot be buried. Some fires never go out. Yuna opened her eyes. They were no longer calm. They were no longer empty. They burned with something ancient and terrible. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. "Computer," she said, her voice flat and cold. "Disengage all safety limiters. Authorization. Black Dawn Protocol. Echo 77. The computer responded immediately. Authorization accepted. Warning. This configuration exceeds all safety specifications. Yuna's hands moved across the console, faster than any 47th ranked cadet should be able to move. "I know," she whispered. Outside her ship, the Vexery fighters closed in for the kill. They had no idea what was coming. The classified briefing room was small and dark. The walls were made of thick metal that blocked all signals. No information could enter or leave this room without authorization. Admiral Kang sat at the head of the table. His face was tired, but his eyes were intense. Around him sat the Academy's senior instructors. Instructor Vorth, Instructor Meles, 6 others representing every department of the Academy. They had been summoned here without explanation. They had been told only that it was urgent. "Thank you for coming," Admiral Kang said. "What I am about to show you is classified at the highest level. Nothing you see or hear in this room can be discussed outside these walls. Is that understood?" Everyone nodded. "Good." The Admiral touched a button on the table. 3 days ago, during the evacuation of Mining Colony 7 Kappa, Transport Guard Unit 7 was ambushed by a Vexery carrier group. All 4 cadets were presumed killed. Instructor Vorth shifted in his seat. He remembered that squad. The Valari leader, Korvax, had been one of his best students. "However," Admiral Kang continued, "we have recovered footage from the engagement. The black box from Cadet Yuna's vessel was found in the wreckage. What you are about to see was recorded during the battle." He touched another button. The room's main screen flickered to life. The footage was shaky at first, filled with static. Then it cleared, showing the inside of a small cockpit. Emergency lights flashed red. Warning alarms screamed in the background. Yuna sat in the pilot's seat. She looked different than she did in class. Her face was calm, but there was something in her eyes that none of them had ever seen before. Something hard. Something dangerous. "Computer," she said on the recording. "Disengage all safety limiters. Authorization. Black Dawn Protocol. Echo 77. Instructor Vorath leaned forward sharply. "That authorization code, that's Special Operations. How would a cadet know that?" Admiral Kang held up a hand. "Keep watching." On screen, Yuna's hands began to move across the console. Her fingers were a blur, pressing buttons and adjusting controls faster than seemed possible. This was not the slow, hesitant movement of the 47th ranked cadet they knew. This was something else entirely. Her damaged ship suddenly lurched forward, diving straight toward the enemy formation. "What is she doing?" one of the instructors whispered. "She's flying into them." The Vexery fighters opened fire. Plasma bolts filled the space around Yuna's ship. Any normal pilot would have been hit immediately. The odds were simply too overwhelming. But Yuna was not a normal pilot. She flew through the enemy fire like she could see it coming before it happened. Her ship twisted and rolled, slipping through gaps that should not have existed. One Vexery fighter tried to cut her off. She flew straight at it, waiting until the last possible second, then pulled up so sharply that her ship nearly tore itself apart. The Vexery pilot tried to follow. He was not fast enough. His ship crashed into his wingman, and both exploded in balls of fire. 2 down, 10 to go. The instructors in the briefing room sat in stunned silence. Yuna's voice came through the recording, calm and steady. "Targeting computer offline. Switching to manual aim. Manual aim. Against 10 enemy fighters. In a damaged ship. With no shields." Instructor Vorath had taught combat piloting for 30 years. He had seen the best pilots in the Confederate military. None of them would have attempted what Yuna was doing. None of them could have succeeded. But Yuna succeeded. She spun her ship around, flying backward while firing forward. Her shots were precise, each one finding its target. One Vexery fighter, then another, then another. They fell like insects, unable to match her speed, unable to predict her movements. In 90 seconds, all 12 fighters were destroyed. But the carrier remained. A carrier was massive. It had shields that could stop missiles. It had point defense guns that could shred anything that came close. It was not designed to be attacked by a single small vessel. Yuna attacked it anyway. "Analyzing shield frequency," she said on the recording. Her eyes moved rapidly, reading data that scrolled across her damaged screens. Pattern identified. Adjusting weapon harmonics. Instructor Melee spoke softly. "She's finding the shield weakness." In real time. Without proper scanning equipment. Admiral Kang nodded but said nothing. On screen, Yuna's ship dove toward the carrier. The point defense guns opened fire, filling the space with deadly energy. Thousands of shots per second, designed to destroy anything that approached. Yuna flew through them. Not around them. Through them. She found the patterns in the gun coverage. She predicted where the shots would be before they were fired. She threaded her ship through the smallest gaps, moving at speeds that should have killed her from the force alone. She reached the carrier's hull. "Target acquired," she said. Reactor housing exposed, firing. Her shot punched through the carrier's weakened shields like they were made of paper. It hit the reactor housing dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the carrier began to glow from within. Cracks of light appeared along its hull. The glow grew brighter and brighter until it was impossible to look at. The explosion was enormous. When the light faded, the Vexery carrier was gone. Nothing remained but scattered debris floating in the empty space. Yuna's ship drifted among the wreckage, silent and still. Her life support was failing. Her engines were dead. She had maybe an hour of oxygen left. But the evacuation transports were safe. 15,000 civilians would live because of what she had done. The recording ended. Silence filled the briefing room. For a long time, nobody spoke. The instructors looked at each other, struggling to process what they had just witnessed. Finally, Instructor Vorath found his voice. That's not possible. I've seen her in training. She can barely fly a standard exercise course. She ranked 47th in her class. She wanted to rank 47th, Admiral Kang replied. She could have ranked first. She could have ranked first in any class, in any academy, anywhere in the galaxy. She chose to hide. But why? Another instructor asked. Admiral Kang sighed heavily. He looked suddenly older, the weight of secrets pressing down on him. Because 8 months ago, the Vexery killed everyone she ever cared about. And she came here to disappear. To forget. To stop being who she really is. And who is she really? Instructor Melis asked quietly. She already suspected the answer. Admiral Kang met her eyes. She's the last survivor of Black Dawn, the most classified special operations unit in Confederate history. For 3 years, she and her team conducted missions behind enemy lines that most people will never know about. They were ghosts. They were legends. He paused. And now she is the only one left. The door to the briefing room slid open. Una stood in the entrance. She was out of the medical bay, though she still looked pale and tired. Her academy uniform hung loose on her thin frame. But her eyes were different now. The mask she had worn for months was gone. She looked at each instructor in turn. Then she looked at Admiral Kang. I know you've seen the recording, she said. And I know what comes next. Reassignment, debriefing, another cover identity, another place to hide. She took a breath. I'm tired of hiding. Admiral Kang studied her for a long moment. What do you want, Operative Han? Una stepped into the room. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but filled with something that made everyone lean back slightly. The Vexery killed my team. My family. They think they've won. They think Black Dawn is finished. Her eyes burned with cold fire. I want to prove them wrong. I want to finish what my unit started. I want to show the entire galaxy what humans are capable of when we stop pretending to be weak. The room was completely silent. Then, slowly, Instructor Melis smiled. The still water, she murmured. I always knew something was hiding beneath. The classified files arrived within the hour. Admiral Kang spread them across the briefing table, page after page of information that most people in the galaxy would never see. Red stamps marked every document, top secret, eyes only, classified above all clearance, levels. The instructors gathered around. Reading in silence. Han Una, born 22 years ago in the city of Bizon. On old Earth, her father was a factory worker. Her mother was a teacher. She had one younger brother who died when she was 12 from a disease. That could have been cured if her family had enough money for treatment. That death changed her. Why Una stopped being a normal child after that. She stopped playing. She stopped laughing. She started training instead. She ran until her legs gave out. She studied until her eyes burned. She pushed herself harder and harder, driven by a fire that nobody understood. At 15, she was accepted into the Confederate military youth program. At 17, she graduated at the top of her class. At 18, she was recruited by Special Operations. By 19, she was Black Dawn. Black Dawn was created 12 years ago, Admiral Kang explained to the instructors. Its purpose was simple: strike the Vexery where they felt safest. Behind their lines. In their territories. Places where no Confederate force had ever reached. He pulled out a series of mission reports. In 3 years of operation, Black Dawn completed 47 missions. They destroyed Vexery weapons factories. They assassinated high-ranking military commanders. They stole intelligence that saved millions of lives. He paused. They lost 0 operatives. Until 8 months ago. Instructor Vorath looked up from the documents. What happened 8 months ago? Admiral Kang's face grew dark. They were betrayed. Someone sold their location to the Vexery. Their extraction ship was destroyed before it could reach them. They were trapped on a Vexery world, surrounded by an entire army. He pulled out one final document. It was a transcript of radio communications recovered after the battle. Yuna's voice came through the recording first. "Command, this is Black Dawn. We are surrounded. Request immediate extraction." Static. Then a response. "Black Dawn, this is Command. Extraction is not possible. All available ships are engaged elsewhere. You are ordered to hold position until relief arrives." A different voice spoke next. Older, rougher. "Command, we're not going to last until relief arrives. There are thousands of them and 12 of us." "Understood, Black Dawn. Do what you can." More static. Then the sound of explosions, screaming, the noise of battle. One by one, the voices on the recording went silent. One by one, the members of Black Dawn died, until only one voice remained. "This is Yuna. I'm the last one." "Repeat, I am the last one." Her voice was steady, even as gunfire echoed around her. "Tell Command that Black Dawn completed its mission. The target has been destroyed. The intelligence has been transmitted." A pause. "Tell them we did our job." The recording ended. Silence filled the briefing room. "She held off the enemy for 6 more hours by herself," Admiral Kang said quietly. "When our rescue team finally arrived, they found her unconscious in a pile of rubble, surrounded by the bodies of over 200 Vexery soldiers. She had killed them all with nothing but a broken rifle and a combat knife." Instructor Vorath stared at the documents in disbelief. "And after all that, she came here? To the academy? To pretend to be a mediocre cadet?" Admiral Kang nodded. The psychological evaluation after her rescue recommended immediate discharge. She had lost everyone she cared about. She had watched her entire team die while she survived. The doctor said she needed years of therapy. They said she would never be fit for duty again. But she refused, Instructor Meili's guest. She refused, Admiral Kang confirmed. She said she didn't want to fight anymore. She said she wanted to disappear. She requested transfer to the academy under a cover identity. High Command didn't know what else to do with her, so they agreed. He looked at the instructors around the table. "For 8 months, she has been hiding here, pretending to be ordinary, pretending to be weak, trying to forget everything she lost." His voice softened. "I think she was hoping that if she became nobody, the pain would eventually stop." Instructor Meili's shook her head slowly. "Pain like that never stops. It only waits." The door to the briefing room opened again. Yuna walked in. She moved differently now that her secret was revealed. There was a confidence in her steps that had been missing before. A certainty, but there was also sadness. A deep, heavy sadness that seemed to press down on her shoulders. She sat down at the empty chair at the end of the table. For a moment, she just looked at the documents spread across the surface. Her eyes lingered on a photograph clipped to one of the files. 12 people in black uniforms, standing together, smiling at the camera. Her team. Her family. "I've thought about that day every single night since it happened," she said quietly. "I've replayed it 1,000 times. Wondered if I could have done something different. If I could have saved even one of them." She touched the photograph gently. Minji was our medic. She was always making jokes, even in the middle of firefights. Junwoo was our explosives expert. He had a daughter back home that he never stopped talking about. Hejin was our sniper. She could hit a target from 3 kilometers away without even trying. Her voice caught slightly. They were my family. Not by blood, but by choice. We had been through everything together. And then, in one day, they were all gone. Admiral Kang leaned forward. Yuna, I need to ask you something important. The recording from the battle has been analyzed by Vexery Intelligence. They know who destroyed their carrier. They know the Black Dawn isn't completely dead. Yuna looked up at him. I know. You're a target now. The Vexery will be looking for you. They'll want revenge. Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Good. The single word hung in the air like a blade. For 8 months, I've been running from who I am, she continued. I thought I could become someone else. Someone ordinary. Someone who didn't have to carry the weight of 11 deaths on her shoulders. She shook her head. But I was lying to myself. I can't be ordinary. I can't be weak. Not when the people who killed my family are still out there. She stood up from her chair. The Vexery think they've won. They think Black Dawn died on that planet 8 months ago. Her eyes burned with cold fire. They're wrong. Black Dawn didn't die. It was just sleeping. And now it's time to wake up. Instructor Vorath spoke carefully. What exactly are you planning to do? Yuna looked at him. The same thing I've always done, Instructor. The same thing my team trained me to do. She turned toward the door. I'm going to show the Vexery why they should be afraid of humans. And I'm going to make sure they never forget it. She walked out of the room without looking back. Admiral Kang watched her go, his expression unreadable. Well, Instructor Meili said quietly, I think we can all agree that she will not be returning to logistics duty. Despite the tension in the room, several instructors laughed odd, but Admiral Kang did not laugh. He was looking at the photograph of Black Dawn, thinking about the future. The war was about to change, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what it was truly capable of. 6 months had passed since the battle at Mayan Colony 7 Kappa. In that time, everything had changed. The Vexery hegemony, encouraged by their successful attack, had launched the largest offensive in 30 years. 100 warships. 2 million soldiers. Their target was the heart of Confederate space itself. The Allied Confederation responded with everything it had. Ships from every member species gathered at the border. Valari battleships, Norathi cruisers, Krexi attack wings, human destroyers. The largest fleet in the history of the Confederation. But there was one ship that did not fit with the others. It was called the Forgotten. It was not part of any official military structure. It answered to no chain of command. Its crew of 20 was made up entirely of survivors. People who had lost everything to the Vexery. People who had nothing left but the fight. And at the center of that crew was Yuna. She stood on the bridge of the Forgotten, looking out at the sea of stars before her. In a few hours, the largest battle in a generation would begin. Millions of lives would hang in the balance. She was ready. Captain, said a voice behind her. Fleet Command is asking for our position in the battle formation. Yuna turned to look at the speaker. His name was Sumho, a former Marine who had lost his entire squad to a Vexery ambush 2 years ago. He had been angry and broken when Yuna found him. Now he stood tall and focused, ready for whatever came next. Tell them we'll be at the front, Yuna replied. Where we always are. Sumho nodded and returned to his station. The other crew members worked silently around the bridge. Each of them had their own story, their own loss, their own reason to fight. Yoonji had been a civilian pilot before the Vexery destroyed her transport ship and killed everyone she loved. Now she was the best pilot in the entire Confederation. Hyungwoo had been a scientist studying peaceful applications of energy technology. Then the Vexery bombed his research station, killing his wife and daughter. Now he was their weapons specialist. Moran had been a teacher on a colony world. She had watched the Vexery burn her school to the ground with her students still inside. Now she was their tactical officer. 20 people, 20 stories, 20 reasons to make the Vexery pay. The Forgotten had become famous in the 6 months since Yuna had gathered them together. They struck Vexery supply lines without warning. They appeared from nowhere, destroyed their targets, and disappeared again before anyone could respond. The Vexery had started calling them ghosts, demons, monsters. Yuna preferred to think of them as justice. The battle began at dawn. Confederate ships surged forward to meet the Vexery fleet. Space itself seemed to burn as thousands of weapons fired at once. Ships exploded like stars being born and dying in the same instant. The Forgotten dove straight into the heart of the enemy formation. They were not trying to win the battle by themselves. That would be impossible. What they were doing was something more specific, more targeted. The Vexery command ship was in the center of their fleet. It was the largest ship in the engagement, protected by dozens of escorts. From that ship, the Vexery admirals coordinated their entire offensive. If that ship fell, the Vexery attack would collapse. "Enemy fighters incoming," Onji reported from the pilot's seat. 47 contacts. No, 63. They're scrambling everything they have to stop us. Good, Yuna said calmly. That means they're scared. The Forgotten twisted through the enemy fire like a living thing. Yunji flew with a skill that bordered on impossible, finding paths through the chaos that no computer would have predicted. Hayamu's weapons struck with deadly precision, taking down enemy fighters one after another. But there were too many. A Vexery missile struck their left engine. The ship shook violently, alarms screaming across the bridge. "Engine 2 is offline," Moran reported. "We're losing power." Yuna gripped the edge of her command chair. "Keep going. Captain, if we lose another engine—" "I said keep going." The Forgotten pushed forward, bleeding smoke and fire but refusing to stop. Around them, the battle raged. Confederate ships fell. Vexery ships fell. The space between the two fleets was filled with debris and death. But slowly, impossibly, the Forgotten was making progress. The Vexery command ship grew larger in their view screen. Its escorts tried to form a defensive line, but the Forgotten slipped through, taking damage but never stopping. "We're in range," Hyunwoo announced. "But Captain, our weapons are damaged. I can give you maybe one shot. 2 at most." Yuna stood up from her chair. "1 shot is all I need." She walked to the weapons console herself, pushing Hyunwoo gently aside. Her fingers moved across the controls with the same inhuman speed she had shown at the Academy battle months ago. "Analyzing shield frequency," she murmured. "Finding the weakness." Around her, the bridge crew held their breath. The Vexery command ship filled the view screen. It was enormous, bristling with weapons. Any moment now, those weapons would fire. Any moment now, the Forgotten would be destroyed. Yuna's eyes found the weakness. "There," she whispered. She fired. The shot was perfect. It punched through the command ship's shields at exactly the right point, exactly the right angle. It struck the reactor core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the command ship began to glow from within. Cracks of light spread across its hull. The glow grew brighter and brighter until it was impossible to look at. The explosion was the largest of the entire battle. When the light faded, the Vexery command ship was gone. And with it, the Vexery offensive collapsed. Without coordination from their admirals, the Vexery fleet fell into chaos. Their attack formations broke apart. Their ships began to retreat. What had been an overwhelming offensive became a desperate escape. The Confederate fleet pressed forward, driving the enemy back. Ship after ship fell to their guns. By the 18th hour, the battle was over. The Vexry had lost over half their fleet. Their invasion had been completely stopped. It was the greatest victory in Confederate history, and everyone knew who was responsible. On every news channel and every corner of the galaxy, the story was the same. A single ship, crewed by survivors and outcasts, had struck the killing blow. Humans, the species that everyone had dismissed as average, had turned the tide of the entire war. Una stood on the bridge of the Forgotten, looking out at the debris field that had once been the Vexry fleet. Her ship was badly damaged. Several of her crew were injured, but they were alive. "Captain," Sunho said quietly, "Fleet Command wants to give you a medal. Several medals, actually. They're talking about making you an admiral." Una laughed softly. It was the first time any of them had heard her laugh in months. "Tell them no," she said. "I'm not interested in medals or rank. I never was. Then what do you want?" Una turned to look at her crew. These 20 broken people who had found purpose in each other. These survivors who had refused to give up. "I want to finish what we started," she said. "The Vexry still exist. They'll rebuild. They'll attack again. And when they do, we'll be there to stop them." She paused. "Not because we have to. Not because anyone ordered us to. But because that's who we are." She looked out the view screen one more time. "We are the Forgotten. The people the galaxy gave up on. The humans that everyone underestimated." Her voice grew stronger. "But we are also Black Dawn. We are the fire that cannot be extinguished. The light that shines in the darkness." Behind her, her crew stood a little taller. "The Vexry killed the people I loved. They thought that would break me. They thought that would break humanity." Una smiled, and for once, there was warmth in it. "They were wrong. We are not broken. We are forged." She turned to face them all. "So let's show the galaxy what forged humans can do." 3 years later, the Vexry hegemony signed an unconditional surrender. The Academy on Station Prometheus added a new course to its teaching: Human Special Operations Tactics. It became the most popular class among non-human cadets. Instructor Vorath, now Admiral Vorath, personally approved every human applicant who crossed his desk. And in a quiet garden on old Earth, 11 names were carved into black stone. Above them, a simple message: they were the first. They will not be the last. Black Dawn lives. Una visited that memorial once a year. She would stand before the stone in silence, remembering the faces of the people she had lost. But she no longer felt only sadness. She felt pride, because their legacy lived on. In the Forgotten, in the Academy, in every human who refused to be underestimated. Black Dawn had fallen, but from its ashes, something greater had risen, and the galaxy would never forget.